Hello everyone, my name is George Mertens, and the fly I'm going to tie for you tonight is the Hendrickson Improved Sparkle-Dun. It's a fly that I learned about out at the Blue Ribbon Fly Shop out in West Yellowstone, Montana. My home water is the Delaware River. Great Hendrickson hatches. A lot of flat water, a lot of flat, difficult water, a lot of difficult fish, big snakes, so be careful. Why I like Hendricksons, Compara-Duns or parachute type flies, they ride low in the water. The deer hair wings, sometimes the deer hair, if you pull it down, it will simulate the legs on the surface of the water. I use it with a trailing shuck. It's a CDC feather with a few strands of Zelon over the top, and I find that this really attracts the difficult fish. And I've spent a lot of time copying the shucks during the Hendrickson hatch that I find in the water. I mean, they're there by the thousands. You could just pick up handfuls of them. And they're this amber translucent type color, and they have a little bit of dark to it. And if you saw Ozzy's video, why I think they're so effective is that unlike standard dry fly tails that stay on top of the water surface, this dips below the water surface a little bit, and it comes into the trout's window, into his view, much sooner. As you saw in Ozzy's video, when he had the fly coming downstream, if it was right on a surface, the trout didn't see the fly until it was almost over the top of him. If anything, any part of that fly was sticking below the surface, it came into his view much faster. Another reason I like the fly, they're cheap. I mean, they're very cheap to tie. You don't have to buy any expensive hackles. One thing that you do need to tie a good Comparadun, though, is a nice patch of deer hair. When you're looking for deer hair, you want something nice and uniform. Kind of looks like a carpet on the top. You want it hollow, where when you take and you bury your thumbnail into it, you will crush it, so that way it will hold down onto the hook and it will float a lot better. The early Compara-Duns, there were articles written about buying a deer mask. The only thing that deer masks wound up being good for were for Halloween. I mean, they're no good for tying Compara-Duns, especially if you're a beginner. You'll never get the fly to look right, and you'll get disgusted with it. I bought this patch at the 2000 Fly Show, the Blue Ribbon booth. They specialize in Compara-Duns or Sparkle-Duns. If you get to the show early, make it your business to go over to the Blue Ribbon, and you can pick up a nice patch of hair that's good for thousands of flies. What I'll be tying this on tonight is a size 16 Tiemco 100. I know most of you have heard of bigger Hendricksons in size 12s and 14s. This particular species matches a size 16 Tiemco very good. If you were tying a mustad 94-840, then you could probably get away with the size 14 fly. You can use yellow 8-0 Uni-Thread. What I have here tonight is I have this Benici 12-0 thread. It's pretty strong. Hopefully I won't break it in front of everybody here. Put a little base of thread underneath where I'm going to mount the deer hair first. It's important to get the wing on first because that's the most difficult part of the fly. If you can't get the wing looking good, there's no use in continuing with the rest of the fly. Choosing the amount of deer hair off of the hide is also a little bit getting used to. I like to describe to people that when it's compressed in your hand, it equals about the thickness of a matchstick, a paper matchstick, when you would take it out of the matchbook cover. For a size 16, you have to add more if you're going with a bigger fly. I use a comb to comb out the underfur. My good friend Tom Kapusta searched high and low for one of these nice little combs, little brass comb. I think think he went to every beauty parlor in Middlesex County before he found me, so he's not here tonight, so I'll have to give him the business about that next time I see him. I'm stacking it. I put the tips down. We want to get the tips even. When I had a dog, whenever I was doing that, he'd be barking every time I tied a fly. So somebody was at the door. See if you have any errant ones that you want to pick out, ones that aren't stacked up quite right, ones that might have a little curlicue on it. You want to get rid of them first. And now I'm going to put it on the top of the hook. And I'm going to take 4 loose turns. Let me get that back. Before I pull it down tight to flare it. Now I'm winding back to bind the body in a little bit more. I hold up the butts at a 45-degree angle so we get a nice taper to that. Bind the rest of the butts down. Now I'm going to put a little Zelon backing on it. The improved sparkle dun uses a little of the Zelon. I like it. It adds a little color to the wing. It adds a little luster. Looks better in the fly box. And I think if you use a fly dressing on it, it holds the dressing as well. Now you want the length of the deer hair and the length of the Zelon to be approximately equal to the straight part of the hook shank. I'm going to tie the Zelon in right behind it. Cut that off at a 45. And now I'm going to wind the thread forward to stand the deer hair up. You can, a lot of people tying the Comparadun will pick it all up at once and throw the thread wraps in front of it. I saw a Lefty Crave video once, and he elects to grab a few strands and maybe do this in 3 or 4 bunches at once. All right, and now I'll build a little ramp up in front of the fly to help stand up that deer hair. And I'll throw a wrap behind it. Okay, and we'll come back to that in a minute. What we're going to do now is we're going to add the CDC trailing shuck. I've got gold or amber colored CDC here. I think it's the actual color on the package says gold, but when you look at it, it's more of an amber color. And I'm going to use the whole feather, but only the tips of it. You want to tie this off the back end of the hook, and you want it a little shorter than the straight part of the hook. So I'm going to put a couple wraps on here and now pull it to adjust the length. Now over the top of that, I'm going to put a few strands of, it's called Mayfly Brown Zelon, Micro-Zelon. I'm not cutting the CDC, I'm just trimming the Zelon a little bit. Okay, now I'm ready for the dubbing. A little wax on a thread. The dubbing I like to use is, I'm a big fan of Fly-Rite Poly dubbing. I know they've come out with a lot of dubbings that are much finer, but I like the Fly-Rite. For this particular fly, I actually mixed 2 colors. I used the light Hendrickson blend, which was, I think it's in the handout, number 27, and then the number 39, which is the Slate Drake blend. Don't try and blend them together in a blender. My friend Greg will tell you what happens when you do that. The flies sink; they don't float anymore. I guess they don't hold the air pockets in there quite good enough. Plus it's got a lot of mottled colors to it. So you have to, it's a little tedious mixing it by hand, or if you got a couple old combs and card files, you can use that to blend it. You're very sparse with the dubbing. We have most of the body thickness already made up with the underbody here. My first fly tying instructor told me when you think you have enough dubbing, you have too much. So, Mayfly bodies, you want to keep them very, very thin. As I get up to the wing, now I'm going to take a turn in front and behind so we can cover the space that's underneath the wing. Do that a couple times, a couple, 3 times. A little bit right there. Front of the wing. Now you want to shape the wing a little bit. You want to fan it out. Just grab it with your fingers. Move it out so you've got almost like a 180-degree fan. Support that. And there you have it.